Well, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to the study of Meezan, of course, which is the understanding of Ustaz Javed Ahmad Ghamidi regarding the contents of Islam. So we are studying the chapter on morals and morality. And as far as this chapter is concerned, its last section relates to a very important topic, and that is what exactly is the pinnacle of morality. This pinnacle of morality is something that takes you very close to to your creator. If you are able to follow this pinnacle, if you're able to at least set your eyes on the targets which this pinnacle actually delineates for you. And this is something that has been actually mentioned in Surah, in one of the surahs of the Quran, and this is something that is incredible in the sense that in Surah Ahzab, which is the 33rd surah of the Quran, this benchmark regarding the height that a person can reach as far as a human being is concerned is pointed out, and this is something that is pointed out in just one verse in the Quran, and this one verse is something which actually picks 10 attributes of a person which must be engendered, which must be worked for, so that we can reach that height, that the character which the Almighty wants in us to be instilled. And these 10 traits actually are the ones that are mentioned in this one verse. So we have discussed 5 of those traits, the first 5 in our previous session, and today we'll be taking up the remaining portion, or the next 5 of these traits. But just to give you an idea that as far as this verse is concerned, that you must know vis-a-vis the fact that this is the verse that lets us know about these 10 traits. So the words are Innal Muslimina wal Muslimat wal Mu'minina wal Mu'minat wal Qanitina wal Qanitat والصادقين والصادقات والصابرين والصابرات والخاشعين والخاشعات والمتصدقين والمتصدقات والصائمين والصائمات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والحافظين فروجهم والحافظات والذاكرين الله كثيرا والذاكرات أعد الله لهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. So you can see that there is a very special ring to this verse, and that is the 10 traits which are mentioned by singling out both men and women. So normally in the Quran, when traits of good character are referred to, they are done in the male gender, of course, implying the female gender as well. But there are instances in the Quran in which both the male and the female gender are picked out and they're singled out, so that the stress and the emphasis of them should remain clear that these are traits that both men and women must profess. So if you look at the translation, it says, indeed, men and women who are Muslims, are true believers, serve God diligently, are sincere, patient, humble themselves before God, spend in charity, who fast and guard their private parts, and remember God in abundance. On them, God will bestow forgiveness and has prepared for them a great reward. So, viewers, you can see that the first 5 traits, if you look at the Arabic text also, it's not going to be any difficult for you to understand. So, the word Muslim or Islam, which means submission, is mentioned first, and we have mu'min and mu'mineen and mu'minat, referring to the aspect of iman or faith. So, this is the second attribute or the second trait. The third is qanitina wal qanitat, which means that they are serving God diligently. Qanitina wal qanitat. And then, of course, the fact that they are sabirina was sabirat, which means that they are truthful. So qanitina al qanitat, and they are truthful. And then we have was sabirina was sabirat, which means that they are patient. Both of them are patient. And then we will be discussing the remaining 5 traits, viewers, which will be related to today's discussion. So they are al-khashi'ina wal-khashiyat, which means that they are ones who humble themselves before God. And the next one, which is the 7th one, is wal-mutasaddiqina wal-mutasaddiqat, which means they spend in charity. Then we have the 8th one, which says was-sa'imina was-sa'imat, which means that they are ones who fast, referring to the optional fast. Then the ninth one is وَالْحَافِظِينَ فُرُوجَهُمْ وَالْحَافِظَاتِ, which means that they guard their private parts. And the last or the tenth one is ذَاكِرِينَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا وَالذَّاكِرَاتِ, that they remember God in abundance. So these 10 traits, viewers, they form the pinnacle of humanity. God wants every single human being to engender these traits, these attributes in his self, in his character, and you can clearly see that they make a person God conscious, they make a person God oriented. And these traits, of course, they they beckon us, they call us that this is in fact the call of duty as people by God to have all these traits before ourselves and to do our best as much as we can in this regard to engender these traits. And remember, it is these traits that make us individuals who are able to understand the will of God and at the same time are equally willing to actually have that will found in our own selves. And this, of course, dear viewers, is something that we have to accomplish and try our best, because unless we become good Muslims, unless we have that human instinct in us, which is very important, unless we have humanity, which is, of course, something that has been spelled out in this verse, then being a good Muslim is something that is virtually impossible. So, Islam or God's religions are built on these traits. So, these traits have to be found in order for God's religion to work, and as something which is dubbed and called as divine guidance, it is something that can only take its root in a person if that person is someone who has this God conscious level in his self or herself. So let's start discussing the remaining five traits which I just uh, spelled out before you. So the sixth one is al khushu. And of course, the word khushu actually means to humble a person before God. And the verse which is mentioned in this regard, of course, before we study that, it is important to know that this that khushu is basically humility and civility, which is engendered in a person as a result of comprehending the majesty, the grandeur, and the splendor of God. So this is the humility which is engendered in ourselves when we see God's majesty, His power, His exaltedness. And you can say that it is an internal feeling which makes a person submit himself or herself before God, and also produces in the person the feelings of mercy and love for other human beings. So these feelings of love for other human beings is part of this khushu, of this diligence towards God. And in the first case, when we become submissive to God, its best manifestation is the salah, is the prayer, especially the tahajjud salah. When a believer communicates with the Almighty while being cut off from the world, and nothing except the remembrance of God fills his secluded moments. And we know the words that are often used in the Quran, like mustaghfirina bil ashar, which mean that they are people who seek forgiveness in the last part of the night. And then we have, of course, the famous verse of Surah Furqan, which says, وَالَّذِينَ يَبِيتُونَ لِرَبِّهِمْ سُجَّدًا وَقِيَامًا, that they are those who spend their nights while standing and prostrating before their Lord. So these are the verses that express this khushu, this humbling ourselves before God. And by placing khushu immediately before charity, of course, which is the next trait mentioned right after, and the fast, which is also the next one, the Almighty, through this arrangement, this sequence, has referred to this very aspect and called the prayer by its essence. So khushu is something which is the essence of the prayer. And right after the prayer, we know that what has been mentioned is charity and the fast. So this essence of khushu manifests itself the most in the tahajjud prayer, the tahajjud salat. And it is evident from various other verses of the Quran and from the guidance that has been provided to us by the Prophet, that in this time a person is in the presence of his Lord, and it is a time cherished by people who love God. So the calm, the peace at this time stands unrivaled in the 24 hours of a day. Peace and tranquility, they reign supreme for the earth to the heavens. From the earth to the heavens, there is all this peace and tranquility. Everyone is asleep at this time, and perhaps even Satan is sleeping. Only the Almighty, who never sleeps, is awake, or that person is awake who is among the most fortunate. If one stands up in the shade of the stars, one will in reality feel that the doors of the heavens are open. One will hear a proclamation of mercy and acceptance of repentance. The aura and ambience of this time is so manifest that both the pious and the profane, the righteous and the unrighteous are aware of them. Those who sleep at this time think that it is the best time for sleep, and those who are awake at this time, they know that it is the best time for remaining awake. And in reality, both are correct. Both are correct in their contentions, because the time which is the most cherished for sleeping is precisely the one which is the most cherished for being awake. Real sacrifice is the sacrifice of what is the most cherished. And this is the time which is the most cherished for human beings when they are deep in sleep at night. And for this reason, the Almighty has fixed this time for the prayer of His near ones and His favored ones. For those who leave the comfort of their beds at this time, a difficult thing, a difficult proposition, the Almighty manifests Himself from them, for them, and it is as if He has descended from the heavens to hear their prayers, and He wishes and proclaims that, as we know from the famous hadith, that is there any person who repents at this time that I may forgive them? Is there someone who seeks my mercy that I may enshroud him in my mercy? Some words that I have cited from a hadith. Now, this is how khushu relates to God. But of course, the consequence of this is that this same khushu relates to a human being as well, to other human beings, to our fellow human beings. And now, when this is the case, this feeling affects the whole personality of a believer and makes him or her an embodiment of affection for his family, and very caring and sympathetic towards his friends, relatives, and acquaintances, and a fountainhead of guidance for the society. So it is because of such kind, humane, and benevolent people that comes into being a society which is paradise of God on earth, and the objective and desire of every upright person. And we know that the Quran, when it mentions, or it actually outlines the attributes of such noble souls, the way it addresses them is basically in the same essence that we have been discussing. So words like Ibadur Rahman allazina yamshuna al ardi hauna, which of course mean to the effect that the true believers, they are, who are they? They are ones who walk humbly on the earth. So Ibadur Rahman allazina yamshuna al ardi hauna. So the the true believers of the most merciful God are ones who walk very humbly on earth. And what happens then? وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. And if people who are overcome with emotions, they argue with them, they say, قَالُوا سَلَامًا, peace be to you, and leave their way. They don't engage with them. They just ignore them, because they know that a person who has gone furious and gone out of his mind, there's no point in discussing anything with that person. It's better to leave the presence of such a person. And then, of course, وَالَّذِينَ يَبِيتُونَ لِرَبِّهِمْ سُجَّدًا وَقِيَامًا, that they spend their night standing and prostrating before their Lord. سُجَّدًا وَقِيَامًا. And what do they say? The Quran says, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا اصْرِفْ عَنَّا عَذَابَ جَهَنَّمَ, that they say or they pray, Lord, ward off from us the torment of fire, or torment of hell. Inna azabaha kana gharama, because the punishment of hell is ever clinging, it stays. It is an evil dwelling and an evil abode. So, inna mustaqarran wa muqama. So you see, these are the practices of people who, when they are brought into the presence of God, they realize that as far as we are concerned, this khushu, this humbling ourselves before God, is something that has to be present. And as a consequence of this, not only present before God, but it has to be transferred towards other human beings as well. And this makes a person an embodiment of humility, of sacrifice, of affection, and of love for his fellow human beings. So this is the sixth trait which is mentioned in this verse actually. So as far as the next trait is concerned, we know that the Quran mentions it as charity. Wal mutasaddiqina wal mutasaddiqat. So the Arabic words are they are people who are charitable, men and women who are charitable. Now, one level of this charitability or spending for the cause of God is that one should pay an obligatory amount from his or her wealth for the cause of God, which we know is called zakat. This is the obligatory part, the mandatory part. This is the first level. Now, a higher level is that a person considers whatever wealth remains with that person after spending on whatever his personal or business needs are, whether they belong to the future or the present. He regards them to be wholeheartedly the right of the society that he lives in. And the highest level in this regard is that he fulfills the needs of other people while sacrificing his own needs. So these are the three levels. In the first level, you're required to pay a mandatory amount, which is zakat. In the second level, you're required to give away anything which is beyond your personal and business needs, whether it belongs to the present or the future. And the third or the highest level is to give away even when you are in need, even when you need something. It's not something that you have spare, but you are in need yourself, but you sacrifice your need. And it is this which is mentioned in the Quran by the words, وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ, which means that those, in spite of being needy, they give preference to the need of others. So the words of the verse under discussion, which of course the verse of Surah Azab would say, al-mutasaddiqina wal-mutasaddiqat. Primarily, they can be used for all these three levels. The level in which you are on a mandatory level paying zakat, the level in which you are expending what is spare other than your needs, and the third level in which you are actually putting others before your need. These all can be implied by the word mutasaddiq. However, when enumerating the qualities of a person, this word is specially used, the way it is used here in this verse. It would primarily refer to the highest level, which means that these are people who sacrifice, who are in need themselves, but they spend on others in spite of being needy themselves. And this actually means that a person is so generous and large hearted that he is out there to look for people who are needy, and he just puts them before himself. And this actually is a manifestation of the previously mentioned attribute of khushu. This humbling of oneself. And when it relates to human beings, it is this topmost pinnacle of character which produces or which is produced in a human being, that he or she becomes altruistic. And it is for this reason that the prayer and spending in the way of God are generally mentioned adjacent in the Quran. That is primarily the reason. Now we come to the eighth trait which is mentioned in this verse, and that we know has been mentioned by the words as-saimina was-saimat, which means that men and women who fast. Now, this specifically targets disciplining the soul and nurturing patience in a person. And the Quran says that its objective is to achieve taqwa, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And therefore, as-saimin, which literally means people who fast, are people who have such a strong desire in them to become pious that they often keep fasting, or they keep on fasting to attain this piety. And it follows from this that these people are the ones who abstain from evil, desist from vulgarity, and their life is an embodiment of the highest morals. Because this is not an easy enterprise that you fast. Besides the mandatory fasts of Ramadan, you keep those fasts in other times of the year. And this is what the Prophet used to do. He used to fast at different periods of time in different months. And we know from his beloved wife Aisha that he would specially keep 3 fasts every month on various days. And then, of course, we know that he used to fast on Mondays and Thursdays as well. And then there were other fasts that he used to keep, like the fast of Arafah. So this was something to make people realize that because taqwa is something which is a standard which God has set, and the best way to attain taqwa or God consciousness, of course, that is what taqwa means, is to exercise patience. And the foremost worship ritual that can create this patience in ourselves undoubtedly is the fast, because we give up our desires, our instincts precisely for this reason, so that we can be trained to achieve patience. Next, the ninth attribute which is mentioned here is that they are ones who guard their private parts. Al-hafizina furujahum wal-hafizat, which means that these men and women, they guard their private parts. Now, this is a consequence of disciplining the soul and of piety. And the expression guarding the private parts, which is hafizina furujahum, it actually refers to people who refrain from nudity, lewdness, and vulgarity. And of course, we know that it's a very common phrase. It occurs at other instances in the Quran as well. The implication is that these people, they guard their chastity and modesty to the utmost. Except at instances they are allowed to reveal themselves, they never do so, whether in private or in public. They also do not wear clothes which reveal body parts, which have sexual attraction for the opposite gender. It is this extent of abstaining from vulgarity that produces the society in which chastity reigns supreme, and men and women, instead of trying to reveal their bodies, are anxious to conceal them as much as they can. So remember, it is this very quality that makes a society a pure lot of individuals, a lot in which we restrain our eyes. We don't let them wander, and we don't let them lust after the opposite gender. And at the same time, the clothes that are worn out of this bashfulness and this constant regard towards modesty. Now we come to the last attribute which is mentioned, and this is the 10th one, and that is zakirin Allah wa zakirat. Zakirin Allah wa zakirat, of course, the word kathira is mentioned to qualify it, which means that they remember God in abundance. They remember God in abundance. So when the thought of a person that he thinks that his God is someone who is looking after him, he does not consider it enough to merely worship God at the specified times of the day. So this thought that he has to keep God in remembrance all the time, this is what we call as remembering God. And for example, when a person sees a sign of God, his tongue spontaneously utters the word Subhanallah, which is glory to be to God. This is a way to actually express that remembrance. It's more spontaneous. So when God is to be remembered, it's not a mechanical exercise. It is some sort of a response that we give. As I said, when we see something glorious, we say Subhanallah. And that is our expression of remembering God. Similarly, when we start any routine, we say Bismillah. Again, this is a form of remembering God, because we say that we begin in the name of God. And when we receive some favor or something from God, what do we say normally? Alhamdulillah, which means gratitude be to God. Of course, that reflect this remembrance of God. Similarly, when we have to do something for tomorrow or the future, we say Inshallah, which means if God wills. Or we say MashaAllah, what God wills. So these are the expressions that establish that living relationship with God. And we ask for God in various ways. In short, at all instances and at all moments, a person in this way is constantly trying to remain in contact with God. And not only this, when he prays, he remembers God. When he fasts, he remembers God. When he recites the Quran, he remembers God. When he spends on the poor, he remembers God. And when he abstains from sin, how can he do so unless he remembers God? And when he falls in sin, how can he come out of it unless he remembers God and becomes anxious to seek his forgiveness from him? So one form of this remembrance is also reflection. So remember, it's not just through uttering words in response to certain things that make you remember God. Another form of this remembrance is mere reflection. So when we look around ourselves, we look at the universe above us, we see an astounding variety. We see an astounding variety of the heavenly bodies he has created. And if we look around us on the planet Earth, we find countless creatures of so different types, so much diversification that one really wonders and is astounded. And similarly, we see his elements of nature, stormy seas and flowing rivers, lush green vegetation, rain pouring down, the coming of the days and night. And when we do this, we see how the heavens and the earth have been made and the astonishing way in which they are built. We don't see any flaw in them. Their benefits and uses for us are so vast and they are so diversified that we simply marvel at them. And then we know that they have a purpose and a meaning. And these are the signs of God. And when a believer actually reflects on these signs, his heart and his mind are filled with God's remembrance. So remember, we started off by saying that reflection is also a form of remembering God. When we contemplate, when we look around and we reflect, and when we do so, we spontaneously say these words that God, you would not have made this world without a purpose. How can this be possible? And that is something that the Quran has depicted at one instance, and we see it clearly. The words that the Quran says in this regard: "Inna fi khalqis samawati wal ardi wa ikhtilafil layli wan nahari la ayatin li ulil albab." And I'm just going to read the translation. In the creation of the heavens and the earth, and in the alternation of night and day, there are many signs for men of understanding, those who remember God while standing, sitting, and lying down, and reflect on the creation of the heavens and the earth. Their prayer is, Lord, you have not created this without a purpose. Glory be to you, for you do not do anything in vain. So save us from the punishment of the fire. So you see, this is how believers, when they are ready and they are game in this regard, they are always up to thinking that how we can connect to God in such a profound way. Now, another aspect of this remembrance of dear viewers must also be kept in mind, and has been pointed out by Ustaz Ghamidi in his treatise, that the Prophet has taught us many supplications or many du'as. And if we remember these du'as or are fortunate enough to at least read them, we find that there is a treasure trove of these supplications that actually connect us to God in such a grand way. So the subtlety and meaningfulness of these words of the Prophet, they are immaculate. There is a little chance that there be a better collection of supplications which can be presented before God. And if a person has the proclivity to remember God, he should remember to make use of these supplications as best as he can. And viewers, I would here like to present a summary maybe of some of the supplications which Ustaz Ghamidi has tabulated in his work Meezan, with which actually this chapter ends. So he has made a list of some of these supplications. So, for example, it says, Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar. Glory be to God. Gratitude is for God only. There is no God except God. He is the greatest. So this is the Prophet explaining or trying to instill God's remembrance in ourselves through these prayers. And then we have Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, which means glory be to God, and He possesses all worthy attributes. And then Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah al-Azim, glory be to God, and He possesses all worthy attributes. Glory be to God, the Mighty. And then La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu lahul mulku wa lahul hamd wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. There is no God but God. He is alone. No one is his partner. To him belongs the kingdom to him belongs the kingdom, and praise is for him only, and his power over all things. And then we have La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, which means power and strength are all from God. Next is this very famous supplication. I'm just going to read the translation. It says, "O God, you are my Lord. There is no God except you. You have created me, and I am your servant. And abiding by my promise and pledge to you to the best of my capacity, I seek refuge with you from the evil of my deeds. I acknowledge your favors upon me, and I confess my sins. Forgive me, because there is none except you who forgives." So, viewers, you can note down how these words so beautifully and majestically portray the emotions of a person who connects himself to God. The next one, again, is a beautiful prayer which says, Gratitude is for God alone who gave us life after death. Alhamdulillahi lazi ahyana ba'dama amatana wa ilayhi nushur. So we normally utter these words when we get up in the morning. And then it says, and one day towards him shall be the return. So every sleeping at night and getting up in the morning reminds us of this rehearsal, or takes us through this rehearsal that reminds us of the day of judgment. And then another prayer which says, we entered into the evening in God's kingdom and also entered into the evening. Gratitude is for God, and there is no God except God. He is alone, and there is no God but He. To Him belong the heaven, the kingdom, and praise is for Him only, and He has power over all things. O God, I seek the night's goodness and the goodness of what is in it, and I seek refuge with you from the evil of the night and the evil of what is in it. O God, I seek refuge with you from laziness, from old age, from the evil of old age, from the trials of the world, and from the torment of the grave. And then another prayer, O God, I have tendered myself to you and submitted my affairs to you and rested my back against you, while fearing your might and while moving towards you with fondness. There is no refuge and resting place after running away from you. And if ever there is, then it is with you. I professed faith in the book that you have revealed and professed faith in the prophet whom you have sent as a messenger. And then still another prayer says, O God, the Lord of the heavens and the earth, and Lord of everything, O He who tears apart a grain and a fruit stone, who has revealed the Torah, the Gospel, and the Quran, I seek refuge with you from all the evil of evil things, whose forehead is in your hands. You are the foremost, nothing is before you, and you are the last, and nothing is after you. You are the apparent, nothing is above you. You are the hidden, and nothing is below you. Please pay my debts and make me affluent by doing away with my poverty. Still another, glory be to He who has made this transport subservient to us. Otherwise, we would not have been able to make it subservient to us. Clearly, this is a dua that has been taught to us to be read when we start our journey on a transport. And in reality, we are to return to our Lord. O God, we ask from you piety and virtue in this journey of ours, and ask from you to make us do a deed which pleases you. O God, make the journey comfortable for us and shorten its length. O God, you are the companion in this journey and the guardian for the family left behind. O God, I seek refuge with you from the hardships of this journey and from any evil sight that I may see and from any evil which may await me when I return to my family and my wealth. So, viewers, you can see how beautifully these words they come out of the mouth of a believer when he or she sets out for a journey. And then it says, another prayer says, O God, I am hopeful of your mercy. Please do not consign me to my base desires for even a moment and reform all my affairs. This is a beautiful sentence. In fact, in the Arabic it says, La takilni ila nafsi tarfata ayn, which means that even for a moment, God, do not consign me to my base desires. And then it says, reform all my affairs, aslih li sha'ni. And then there is no God except you. Still another prayer, O God, I seek your refuge from sorrow, distress, meekness, laziness, cowardice, stinginess, and from the burden of debt and from the dominance of people. The next supplication which is mentioned, O God, I seek refuge with you from laziness, old age, penalties, and sins. O God, I seek refuge with you from the torment of the fire and the trial of the fire and the trial of the grave and torment of the grave and the trial of wealth and the trial of poverty and from the trial of the great deceiver who will pose himself to be Jesus. O Lord, wash my sins with water of snow and hail, and cleanse my heart of sins the way a white cloth is cleansed of dirt, and distance me from my sins, the way you have distanced the east and the west from one another. The next dua, which is the 15th in sequence, says, O God, I seek refuge with you from knowledge which is not beneficial, from the heart which is bereft of humility, from the soul which is never quenched, and from the prayer which is never accepted. The next dua says, O God, forgive my mistakes and foolishness and my excesses I committed in my affairs, and all those things which you are aware of than me. You are more aware of than me. O God, forgive whatever I have done with seriousness and whatever I have done in jest. whatever I have done intentionally and whatever I have done unintentionally, all this is from me. O God, forgive whatever I have sent forward and whatever I have left behind, and whatever I have concealed and whatever I have done openly, and that also which you know more than me. It is you who sends forward, and it is you who relegates backwards, and you have power over all things. Next up, the dua says, O God, I seek from you guidance and virtue and purification of the soul and being self sufficient. The 18th prayer, O God, forgive me, have mercy on me, give guidance to me, grant me peace, and bless me with sustenance. Next up, O God, bless us with good in this world and in the hereafter too, and save us from the torment of the fire. And then we have this very, very powerful prayer, which is the prayer of istikhara, which is mentioned at the end. I'm just going to read it as well. So the words are, O God, because of your knowledge of the unseen and because of your power over your creation, grant me with life till the time you think that living is best for me. And take me away from this world when you think that taking me away is best for me. O God, I seek humility with you in public and in private, and in happiness and in sorrow want you to guide me to the truth, and request you with what is between affluence and poverty, and ask from you a favor that will never end, and the coolness of the eye which will never cease. And I seek from you the strength to be content on your decisions, and seek the blessings of life after death, and the fervor to meet you, and the bliss to see you, such that I neither remain in the calamity that is burdensome, nor trials which may mislead me. O God, grant us the embellishment of faith, and make us such that we are rightly guided, and are able to guide others as well. So, viewers, this is just a sample of 20 invocations, 20 supplications which Ustaz has selected from a whole corpus of Hadith literature. These are beautiful ways to connect ourselves to God. And remember, this is something that we owe to our Creator, to remember Him as much as we can and be more spontaneous than mechanical in this remembrance. And the more we are spontaneous, the more strong will be this living relationship. So we can come to an end to this chapter as well with this brief discussion. And now over to you for any questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, for another wonderful session. If you have any questions, please raise your hand or you can post them in the chat. Our first question asks, does the Quran mention the torment of the grave?
The Quran mentions the torment of the grave in a subtle way, and that is, it tells us that people whose accounts will be settled in this world and who mostly belong to the era of God's messengers, because in the times of God's messengers, God actually delivers the truth in such a comprehensive way that no one is left with an excuse to deny it. And if that person denies the truth, then he is punished or she is punished in this world. And we know that the nations of prophets of God who denied were punished in this world. So that punishment is going to continue in the grave, which of course is a metaphorical expression for barzakh, where people will be living after they are after their souls are claimed, and they will be put in the land of barzakh. So for such people whose account is settled in this world, they will be torment in barzakh. But remember, these are not ordinary people. These are not people like us who live after the prophetic era. So basically, it refers to people who live in the prophetic era, to whom the truth becomes absolutely evident, and when they deny it, they are punished in this world, and that punishment continues in the grave, which of course is barzakh. But people who live after the prophetic era, like people like us, we are just put to sleep, and we will be given a new shape or a new form on the day of judgment, and then our accounts will be presented before us, and then of course the scale would be made, and the rights and the wrongs will be decided, and then punishment of course will be decided regarding whether people which person is going to go to hell and which to heaven. So this is for the people who lived in the post-prophetic era. But for people who live in the prophetic era, as I said, for them, their fate is decided in this world because their account is settled in this world. For us, our account is settled in the next world. So for those whose account is settled in this world, for them, there is this punishment in the land of barzakh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, what would be the limits of Sila Rahmi In case someone is confronted with toxic counterparts and there is apprehension and fear of humility and disgrace while maintaining ties. If maintaining ties leads to harm to oneself or one's family, then is it permissible to keep away from them?
Yes, I think the best judge in this regard is your own conscience. When the situation becomes so precipitous that you feel that there is a danger to your life, or maybe there is something that can really go wrong, then yes, this is a very legitimate excuse. But do think that this is something that you can only judge through your conscience. And if there is anything below this, then yes, it is the right of the parents or your blood relatives that as much as you should show affection to them, and that of course you can even do when you're not meeting them at times. So that's also possible if you're not meeting them. But yes, meeting them and not cutting ties off from them is also, which is something which is recommended, unless, as I said, or maybe as you have said, something very very bad has happened.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. For those with questions, either raise your hand or you can type your questions in the chat. If you don't know how to raise the hand, that's all right. You can just send me a chat, and when it's your turn, I'll call on your name. The next question asks, are there any specific timings for the tahajjud prayer? Is it always in odd rak'ah? Can it be just one rak'ah?
Yes, there are timings for the tahajjud prayer. So the tahajjud prayers begins at midnight and ends with the start of the fajr prayer. And the rakat have to be odd, and the least rakat have to be three.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Mustafa, you're up next. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
My question is about legality of making investments, and it is in the context of Pakistan.
Mhm.
What the general rule is that whenever you make an investment, whether it is shares or mutual funds or anything, so usually that comes under the domain of the Federal Tax Authority. So whenever you make investment in shares, it can be through banking channel, and all your transactions can be monitored, and whatever gain you make, that is also taxable, and then your money is like the investment is legal and legitimate. But if you see in Pakistan, as far as gold is concerned, so the investment in gold, which is usually in coins or biscuits, so that doesn't come under the domain of the Federal Tax Authority. And throughout Pakistan, whenever you go to a jeweler and you want to buy gold biscuits or coins, they always accept cash and they don't give invoice or anything. So my actually question is that what a Muslim should do if they want to invest in gold biscuits, because if they pay cash and then keep it with them, and later on after a few years they sell it, then the gain is not, they don't show it in their tax returns. So if I am able to explain, then
Yes. So you
my
see,
point well.
basically, this is something that you are doing in a very legitimate way. You're doing nothing wrong. The tax evasion that they are guilty of is something that they'll be answerable for. And I mean, this is something that also the government knows, because you see, all this is before the eyes of the government, and they let this happen. And at times might make laws and maybe have something worked out. But in the first case, the government knows what's going on mostly. And secondly, it's not you who is doing anything wrong. It's basically they who are trying not to give any receipt so that they are not taxable. So that's something on their part. And I think as far as you are concerned, if you make such an investment, if you buy coins or biscuits or solid gold in any way, that's a right that you have, and that would be nothing. There would be nothing wrong with it.
Mustafa, if you have a follow-up question, you're very welcome to ask.
Yeah, so thank you for your answer. I was just thinking that the tax authority, although they don't have the controls over the jewelers for some way or the other, but they put the onus on the taxpayer. So
Mm,
they say that whatever movable, because they classify in immovable and immovable properties. So they
mm,
say that if you want to make investment in a movable property with cash, then it should not exceed 1 million rupees.
mm,
So yeah, so although they don't have the controls, or I don't know what is the reason, they don't have the authority to have a strong, kind of monitoring on the jewelers. But
mhm.
at the end of the day, they put the onus on the taxpayers, that if
Right.
you are making, yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
So I think
yeah,
this is
that's
something that's an anomaly, that is a ambiguity, that's something which is not proper, but it is something that we as citizens cannot set right. We can, of course, raise our voice, we can tell our representatives, and there are so many other malpractices that go on, right, like this one, that all that we can do is let people know, or maybe have our point of view being represented. But that's all that we can do. As far as we are concerned, we are doing nothing illegitimate if we are. I mean, in fact, we, as you said, that we become taxpayers as a result of that, or we, the onus of paying tax lies on us because we have bought gold biscuits or gold coins. So that is a brunt that we are actually bearing. So on the contrary, this is something that, as I said, should be sorted out at the state level. But unless it is done, I mean, this legally, or I would say morally or ethically, we cannot call it to be a malpractice.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, if you are being used in a relationship like boss, children, or by life partner, and you were less wise to understand the situation, you ignored your health and sacrificed your needs to fulfill the burden that they were putting on you. Will it
Hmm.
be a moral value from yourself, or it was totally wasted?
Well, as you said that you were not aware of what was going on, or maybe someone was using you. So, I mean, it's something that God will have to decide. I am no one to decide. But yes, if someone is being used and used without being knowing that that person is being used, that still is an offense by the other person. So the other person will definitely be punished for that. But as for the person who is being used, I mean, it all depends on the situation. Maybe God will compensate that person for this abuse, I would say, depending on the whole situation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, there is a postmodernism notion of morality. It's also called social morality that
Hmm.
denies any God-oriented morality, such
Hmm.
as the one that you explained based on the Quran. How can a believer counter this social morality?
So you see, before you counter social morality, you have to talk about the origin of morality, which is God. So, I mean, always keep this in mind, that whenever you're discussing things with the people and arguing in favor or maybe against something, you must always go to the root cause or the crux of the matter. So you will not be able to argue properly or make a case for social morality, because taken by itself, it cannot be, I mean, finalized or given a final verdict about. Unless, of course, it is backed by the fact that there is a God, and from God emanates the fact that we have to be morally sound. So it's going to boil down to a discussion which is a premise to the discussion of social morality, that in the absence of God, I mean, you can have any morality. In fact, you don't need to even have morality, and that is fine. But if you want to talk about morality per se, or morality in its real essence, then this can only be, I mean, discussed once you are able to discuss the origin of God. And if a person denies that origin or does not concur with you, there's no point in, in going further.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all the questions pertaining to today's session. If anybody has off-topic questions, we still have some time, about 10 minutes. So you can bring those up too. Okay, in case nobody has questions, I have a question for you, Dr. Saleem. This
Yes,
is
please.
pertaining to in I don't remember the surah, but I was reading and Allah says that the children wealth becomes a trial for men and so do children. And there's like a comment saying that women, children, and wealth are all trials for men. I don't understand why is that so specific to men and like how are children trials? I could understand women and wealth, but why children?
You see, because the Quran is addressing a family based on patriarchy, based on the fact that men or husbands that they had a family, so that is why this is, I mean, something that is addressed to them, that there is someone who is in your responsibility. So women or wives are under your responsibility. You have to take care of them, and of course, children as a result are also your responsibility. And at times, if you try to please people who are your responsibility by going overboard, by not realizing that there is a moral restriction in pleasing your spouse or your children, then because you see, you have intense love for your spouse and your children. So there's always a chance that that love actually overrides that ethical value that you must uphold. So that is why people are cautioned and prodded more that this is an instance in which there is a chance because of your intense love for your children, your intense love for your spouse, that you might just ignore some ethical or moral value because there is a chance. However, in the case of people who are not your immediate blood relatives, maybe some far off or distant relative, this chance is hardly there. But because children and spouses, they have a very special bearing on a husband or a father, that is why it's like just cautioning them.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Saleem. The next questioner asks, how do you balance between cultural practices and moral standards?
Cultural practices and moral
Moral
standards.
standards, yeah.
I mean, unless you give a concrete example, I mean, cultural practices they're so numerous. At times, they are very fine. They're okay to go by, and they don't violate any moral standard. And at other times, these cultural practices they really violate moral standards. For example, if you're attending parties or maybe spending or overspending on some cultural festivities. So that would violate a moral standard. So I think it's all a question of just paying heed to the cause of your conscience. Your conscience will tell you that if you're doing something and you're flouting any moral law, as I gave you this example, that if at times we overspend, we show off, and that is a cultural practice in some countries. So, of course, that would be contravening the moral standard in a certain way. So now you have to put your foot down. You have to realize that, well, yes, cultural practices, we are part of a culture, but that culture should not be uh, something that actually proscribes moral behavior.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The next questioner asks, during times of the last prophet, who is responsible for the distribution of the spoils of war? The prophet himself or the commanders who fought and won the war?
Are you talking about the spoils of war?
Yeah,
Is the question about the spoils of war?
yeah, the spoils of war.
Yes, it was the Prophet.
So
And
he
the
personally
Almighty,
took.
the Almighty actually has defined these spoils of war by saying that only 1/5 of these spoils will be kept with the state for state use, and the remaining 4/5 would be distributed among the warriors. So, I mean, there's little much, the discretion that is there is just in the 1/5 part, which is meant for specific purposes. Otherwise, 80% of those spoils were meant to go to the soldiers who were taking part in that battle.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. The next question asks, it's not very clear, but they're saying, what is the dua that you say at the end of the sessions, like astaghfirullah li wa sallu?
Yes, it says Astaghfirullah li walakum walisairil Muslimin. So, which means that God, I seek your forgiveness, Astaghfirullah, for myself and for all the other Muslims. Sair means all. Sairil Muslimin wal Muslimat, and all Muslim men and women.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. In some countries, medical fee is totally free and running with donations. If you don't accept donations in your personal routine life, but happily take treatment from hospitals, is it justified and doesn't make sense? In another case, it is justified for Sayyids.
Well, in the case of the Sayyids, it's just a misunderstanding that has become so very common today. So remember, people today think that if they are part of the Prophet's family, or of course extended family, as is the case, as would be the case today, then they should not accept zakat. So remember, this was something which the Prophet just prohibited for his own self and for his own immediate family. It was not something that he decreed as a general law. And why did he do that? For the reason that we've just discussed earlier, that the spoils of war and some similar other instruments, they were reserved for the use of the Prophet. So the Prophet said that because I am getting income from these spoils of war, I should not in any way get income through, or my family should not get this income from any zakat money. That is why. And what was the first part? You need to repeat that first part.
That like for people, is it justified for them to use the hospital system if they don't accept donations in their personal life?
So what would be the mechanism for that?
Like for medical treatment?
I mean, how would a person accept donations in such a case?
As in they're saying probably that the person doesn't need donations, like they live life okay, but the
Mm.
medical systems are run by donations. And so if you use the hospitals, then you're kind of using the public donation for yourself.
I didn't get it. I mean, you have to explain a little more. How does a person become a beneficiary if and if he or she does become a beneficiary? Why is it not an option that you just don't use it? You just give it up. So what makes it unavoidable?
Mm, I think they're just asking if it's justified to use the hospital system in
I
that.
think they need to explain more and be specific.
Okay. So, who is it? Sarvajabin, if you could please give a bit more.
Hmm.
Oh, they're saying that the hospitals don't accept money.
The hospitals don't accept money, and then what? Which
It's
money?
the hospital is free if you need to use it, and it's free for everyone.
Okay.
So, like,
Then
could you use the hospital, even though in your day-to-day life you're not taking donations from people, but people are putting donations so that hospitals remain free for everyone. I wonder if they're talking about like taxation and like the medical benefits.
yes, I think they should be a little more explanatory in their question.
Oh,
I
they're
failed to
in
understand.
Canada, so it's probably like it's taken
It
out from
relates
their
to their
tax.
own Canadian. Maybe they need to explain more the situation. Maybe they can write to me.
All right, so Sarvad, I'd ask you to please send Dr. Saleem a direct WhatsApp message. The next questioner asks, Ghamidi Saab has often argued that God has a personality and exists beyond the cosmos. There are billions of galaxies and possibly multiverses. How should then one understand God's existence as having a personality? And as an Islamic scholar, what comes to your mind when you think about God?
Well, the question did come to the minds of many people before me, including the prophets of God. And God strictly said that the only way that you can know about me is through my attributes and through my practices. And that is why the Quran has a lot of references to the attributes of God, like He's mighty, He's powerful, He's loving, He's caring, He's affectionate, He's just. So we have a string of attributes which are mentioned in the Quran. And we also have His practices. There are 6 or 7, or maybe a little more practices which are mentioned in the Quran, like, for example, how and why does he give guidance, and when does he not give guidance? What is the rule regarding the rise and fall of nations? How does he forgive people? And then, of course, what are the responsibilities which relate to the fact that there are certain selected individuals like prophets of God, or individuals like the Bani Israel or the Bani Ishmael. So these are some practices which the Quran has alluded to, and then it has alluded to the attributes of God. So all that I can think about God is through these practices and through these attributes. I cannot have any idea about his being, and therefore that is one area that I should just stop thinking about. I know God through his practices, through his attributes, through his practices, and the way these attributes and these practices, they relate to me.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. The final question of the day, because we're out of time, so this will be the last question of the day, asks, if Prophet is mandated to distribute the spoils of war, then how was Ali able to choose a slave girl for himself while collecting the spoils of war in Yemen?
That is an instance that for which you have to provide more details. I mean, you see a lot of historical aspects, they just they rise up and they need to be verified. So when this happened, how did this happen, what exactly was the situation, that needs to be thrashed out from history. I cannot give an opinion unless I study the whole situation. And if you have the whole situation before you, you're most welcome to send it to me. And always remember that historical episodes, they can never override the Quran, because these historical episodes have come down through us through sources which can be correct and which can be incorrect. So if you find something that is against the Quran, then either the practice has not been rightly handed down, there were some other details, or it was wrongly perceived by a narrator and he just penned it and the rest of the narrators just started copying him. So remember, that is how we reconcile a narrative with the Quran, because the Quran is the word of God, it cannot go wrong. But narratives, they have to be checked for their veracity, for the fact whether they actually portray the truth or not. Because at times it's not out of any willful incompetence that these narratives, they become contaminated. At times a person forgets. At times he or she is not able to fully understand. At times the narration is made halfway between the event had already happened and the person just chanced by. So you see, that is the nature of these narratives, and you just cannot equate them to the Quran. So we would need to thrash out what actually happened and then see whether they in any way go against the Quran. If they do, then of course they don't deserve to be accepted, which would plainly mean that either it did not happen the way it has been portrayed, or there were some other details which are missing and they never reached us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, for another fantastic session. Thanks to all the participants for coming through. If you have questions, or if you can think of questions during the coming week, please bring them next week, next Saturday, because we'll be having our monthly Ask Dr. Saleem session. And with that, we'll be having the same textual study of the Quran tomorrow, actually. So with that, please take care, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bye, everyone.